So, I don't know whether David's, Tony, I was going to ask you this in a minute when David's here, but I mean, you've been with the series. Tell us about your first day at the BBC, or rather your second day at the BBC, back in 1981.
Hello. All right. First day ever at the BBC. I came when I was a trainee, what they call this format. I worked in theatre in my life, but I went into the BBC. Never seen it, so I need to talk.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Shall I go?
Introduce Sir David Jason. So we're gonna, as we've got two legends on the stage. Who is he?
I used to be a young man.
Right, anyway, you are the presenter, the introducer.
Allegedly, yes. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to take you back, if I may, to 1981. David, you're in the throes of a new show that no one's seen yet, the summer of 1981. And Tony, you've just started work at the BBC. Day one, you're working on New Peter, I believe.
Training things, we had a massive board, so every day we went out to see what's going on in the track. And I went up and personally I remember Dizzy Baxter saying to me, you know what you're doing. But anyway, we got Tuesday, I went up there, sitting on Monday and Tuesday, and there's this thing saying, only fools and horses. And because it was the first series, I thought it was going back to animals. Didn't know what it was at all, so I ended up at the rehearsal room and there were these guys, all rehearsing about episode 3.
David, do you remember this young man turning up? Do you have any recollection of him? Or when did he first appear on your radar?
I have no idea.
I'll tell you what though, Tony, who was that we had? I know one episode where somebody, was it Ray Buck? Who started the series? Was it Ray Buck, the director?
Ray was the producer, but you know, he did his back, I think, and it was Martin Sharpler, wasn't it?
Martin Sharpler, that's right. So he was another guy that was who directed the first series, first few episodes then? When did you come along? What episode was it?
I think I was only training. I think what happened was I went in and I was training Mandy Fletcher, who was the actual AFM on that series. So I was wandering around seeing what she did. And then Ray didn't appear till the end of that series because he'd been away at the hospital. And he came in and I met him. And I think that's when Ray realised there was a really good potential drinking partner in me. So I ended up doing the second series.
Right, okay, so it was Ray Buck that started the whole thing off, wasn't it?
As a producer, but did he ever direct anything in the first series? I don't think he got that far.
I don't know, but it's slightly academic in a way, because what we're trying to establish was what was your first episode that was as a director, not a trailer?
As a director, it was Dates.
Which one?
Dates, which was the one where you set. My very, very, very first shot as a director of Animals and Horses was a shot of you at Waterloo Station with a bunch of flowers, waiting there, and I was sitting there, and this is how things happened in those days. This is Waterloo Station, right? They didn't let us do in rush hour because we wanted an empty station. So after rush hour, they cleared bloody Waterloo Station so I could get this shot of David standing on his own in the middle of Waterloo Station. And I remember on some sort of crane, I had a camera up the top, taking this huge red top shot, and this was my very, very first shot on Animals and Horses, and I thought, this is the bloody life, isn't it? I've definitely made it now. And there I was, it was brilliant. It was actually, that was the first series. And more importantly, it won the BAFTA, that programme. So, nothing to do with me, I tell you, but I've got this is definitely my life. Anyway, I'm coming here, do a bit of filming, and I get a gong. Very good.
That's interesting because the courage to take that first shot, as you called it, which was a high shot of the whole of the station, that as a director, your first shot, that has took a lot of courage. And from that sort of courage came from the whole series when Tony used to do all sorts of things of his own invention, as it were, that he didn't take. It wasn't written in the script, but he would construct certain pieces that he would see us at the rehearsals, and then he would add to it in a physical way, or a directorial way, as he's just described. And I think if that was his first shot, that was a great courage of yours to take the bull by the horns, as it were, because that was a dangerous thing to do, is to take that sort of shot.
Probably complete stupidity. You know, but no, you're right there. But I mean, we, as we all said, we could go on forever about the blessings of a great script. But the wonderful thing about working on this show was with David and Nick, we were blessed with great scripts, and we knew we didn't have to do huge amounts, but to make it better, because by that time John had written them 70 times, rewritten them, gone to me, put my input in, everybody had a read, thought about it. So we didn't really have a situation when we got talking about it earlier, when we got on location, when we didn't really know what we were doing. We had, normally you can get a show, especially new shows, and some of them, believe me, you'll go out and go, this script is crap, what are we going to do? We spend most of the day arguing what are you going to film. Fools came with that massive kind of blessing of the script. And it was great because John, I could do things and I'd go, maybe that would be better if I did that, and did that, and did that, rather than that. But the thing to do when you're a director, and which you're there to do this as well, it's no good being good on location. The only place you've got to be good is when you get to the edit suite and have the stuff that you shot, because you can't go back and reshoot it. So most of the time, if you're any good at what you do, you're always thinking about the cut sequences and how will that cut together. And also, occasionally you go, I'll do that, and I'll do that. But it's not the script, but I'll do it because it might be useful, it might work well.
Yeah, can I just ask you, Tony, excuse me, we will get round to your questions in a minute.
He's interviewing him.
Yeah, I'd love Tony to tell us all one of my favourite shots of all time. It was the Batman and Robin sequence. And, what I would like Tony to tell us in his own inimitable style was how he created that first opening shot that they came. And I won't describe it any further because it just goes to show how one of the unsung heroes of Only Fools and Horses, we were such a great team and we respected and enjoyed each other. But one of the great moments was Only Fools and Horses was Batman and Robin, which he created. And I'd like him just to tell us in his own words.
Are you talking about the running?
The entrance of them when she was being mugged.
Yes.
And suddenly. So how did you come about creating that sequence in your mind before you put it?
Well, it actually, that's, own up and say it was slightly forced upon us because our friends of the press had arrived in droves because they heard that they were filming the Christmas special of Fools and Horses, and they wanted the picture before the show went out. It was an ongoing thing, and they arrived in that country. So we got loads of people there in security, and they built a tunnel in this part of St Paul's in Bristol. Built a tunnel of blacks hanging over things, so it was kind of a slightly sterile looking set for you to walk through. It was just a bit, so the lighting cameraman, he said, I can do a lot of backlight, which will make it look a bit more interesting. And, more importantly, why don't we use some dry ice? And I went, that could be good. So, I think one
She's from New York.
I think our producer didn't know what people thought I'd gone mad. But, and the other thing was that I couldn't have the guys out on the street because it would cause mayhem. So what we did was, I did the simplest thing, honestly. I think it's a beautiful piece, but the simplicity of it was that we just basically had you running down the middle of the street. We put two doubles in to mark it all the way through and tape, so the focus puller could do it. And then got you guys out, said, turn over, go! And off you came running down, and then right, back in the bag. And then we get the focus puller come out again, and then refocus it. So it's all it is, as you can see, a section of jump cuts. Really simple to shoot. It took most of the night to film it, but you were on the screen, actually on acting time, probably about 10 minutes, until that bit, of course, when you turn around. And she came. It was a beautifully constructed story, wasn't it? Because it was, I think John always wanted to, when you go into going getting stuck in this situation, in fancy dress. And I think Batman and Robin came up. And I do remember a discussion at some point essentially that I think at one point was, let's take it really silly, let's make David Robin and Nick Batman. And he went, actually that's probably a joke too far. So we kind of did all that, but basically when John wrote it, he wrote this idea, and I think I helped him with this lovely kind of idea bit. But then, of course, what he did is he took that story of Batman and Robin, and right from the beginning, he introduced the mugger, the whole mugging situation. It was another story, which was John was brilliant at. He would sometimes come to me and go, say to me, I know what I'm writing to tell them, I haven't got the other story. There was always got to be, he just didn't write that. There was always other stories behind it. So that whole thing, when you see that, the whole comedy of that situation was one, seeing these guys as Batman and Robin, but then turning round and seeing these muggers who've been established all the way through, tearing off into the distance. It just made the whole piece absolutely brilliant. But you're very kind to say the work we did on that, but it was actually forced into us a bit by other circumstances. And someone asked me today, what's your favourite episode? And I couldn't actually think at all. But I did think that bit was magnificent. But all I'm saying is, it's the simplest thing I ever shot. It was on simple as that. So.
Well, you're very humble to say that, but I read it slightly differently. The creative thought that went behind that with the dry ice, the smoke, yes, and we could have a great lighting cameraman, yeah, I agree with all of that. But the concept of how to get the best out of that moment, those moments of the appearance of Batman and Robin, had to be as effective as possible. We could have done it 100 different ways, but the creative process of thinking that the best way to make the effect of them, and then we put the music on, and then coming out of that smoke, that is all part of the creative thing that makes us all laugh. But all of those bits are the bits that help to make Fools and Horses as funny and as good as it was. So, you mustn't, please don't undermine yourself as a director.
I would never do that.
So I think we can all agree that is a classic moment there are so many classic moments, but a wonderful moment. You mentioned the popularity of the show then and the press coverage, but back in 1981, if we can go back there a little bit, you couldn't have got any coverage really to launch the show, and even for those first couple of series, no one was, it's fair to say, no one was terribly interested in it. Even the BBC, I remember John saying, didn't have pictures up of the show in the corridors, and it was tough to get it get it going, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that one of the things you're probably aware of is that the first series got about 3 people, and 2 of those were me and my wife to watch it. The reason was that it wasn't greeted very well. There was no pre-publicity. There was nothing, and the audience, well, the few audience that did see it, was having to get used to, having to learn about the characters and the story. So any comedy, you have to give it time to breathe. You have to nurse it so that the audience can learn about the characters and the people that are in it. And they don't seem to want to do that these days. They want to just get on, get the figures. Well, what happened was, with Fools and Horses, fortunately, I suppose, in a way, our first series went out, and it was greeted with nothing. And then what happened was, when they were thinking about, should we carry on with it, there was something that happened. I can't remember. Tony might remember this. Something happened. They had to fill in a spot, so they repeated Fools and Horses. The first episodes.
Electricians wrote series 2.
Right, well, what happened that was, because there was nothing else to watch on television, they repeated Fools and Horses, and people suddenly went, oh, this isn't too bad, is it? And those people who had seen it were doubly enjoying it because they knew the characters, because they'd seen this in the first lot. Then the big viewers came because there was nothing else to watch. So that's when the big wigs up at BBC went, hey, that's not doing too bad. Should we give them a few more, see if they're really good, And so we got another series. And from that improved again. And I'm delighted to be able to say that we were given the chance to improve on what we had established. And mainly, there was a terrible moment that I think that John Sullivan, the writer, had been given a bit of a bad time on the Citizen Smith that he'd written. And he was a bit despondent, I remember, because I remember talking to him about it, without going into too much detail, that he was a bit reluctant. Is he going to suffer the sort of reactions that he got from various quarters when he wrote Citizen Smith? And so people didn't really encourage him an awful lot. Because of our team that we got together, and we enjoyed it so much, we gave him, John, a lot of encouragement. And I think that helped John to have the courage to push forward with the script. He's really then started to enjoy it because he knew that we were going to enjoy it and we were going to, be part of his family, his team. And so from there, that's roughly how the journey all started. And my God, what a wonderful journey it's been for all of us. Tony and I particularly, and the rest of the cast, we can't thank John Sullivan enough, and we all know that he was taken from us far too soon. But my God, what a legacy he left us all, to still be enjoying all his characters and all his funny stuff that he invented. He really was a great character, and we all respect him. Even now, we love the ability, the brilliance of the show. And the great thing that I would say is, that's very, very, very kind of you. And I would say this, the strange thing about John Sullivan and the show was that, I won't go into it because you probably know, that his journey was, he was an ordinary working class lad who got a job moving scenery at the BBC. Without going into the long story, the great thing that showed that he had a natural talent that didn't come from his education, that he'd gone to university or whatever, clever with words. He was clever with people, and he was a natural storyteller. So what I would say that he is somebody we should look up to for our young people, to say, look, this guy was just an ordinary working lad, and look what he was doing. He chased his dream. He did have a talent, but my God, was it a good talent? But it was nothing to do with his education, because he came from my stock. We were both the result of a working class family. So that talent was pretty special, and so, you know, thank you for that reward, because he deserved it. You know, we're just the tools of his magic pen. Yeah.
During those difficult early days, the show grew, and you were excited very early on to hear you were going, you thought, to Spain to shoot an episode, but that ended up being a beach in Dorset. But then, come a few years later, you were off to Amsterdam for that fantastic episode that we all, I think, love to have back. Tell us a bit about the filming of that, particularly perhaps winding up the director on the boat up on Road Hut, but then actually everybody did get a seat. Can you tell us?
What was Tony? Do you remember that?
Well, I remember, ironically, that we needed a camera on the boat, this terrible fishing boat. There's no way in this day and age we would have been allowed on it. It was a health and safety bloody nightmare. And we all got on it, and Ray took one look at that boat and he said, I tell you what, Cock, I'm going to do. So we had going past the oil rig. So we did the camera on the oil rig, and we did the camera on the boat. And of course I got the camera on the boat. And Ray, thought he was very clever, said, I'm going off today onto the oil rig. What he didn't know was there was no bar on the oil rig. And there was no smoking on the oil rig. And he had a whole day out in the North Sea. It was fantastic. But we got on, I seem to remember, we got on the boat. I think you guys, you and Nick, and presumably Buster, we were all fine. I think it was all the certain members of the departments came down with a lot of seasickness.
Yeah, one of them was one of the directors.
One of the directors.
And I was sitting next to the Sparky, one of the Sparkies there, and this dresser, he was not well, and he was leaning over the side, and the Sparky was sitting next to me, and he's going, look, Dave, look at him, look, he's holding his own Irish on, look, he's holding his Irish on. And nobody knew that this dresser had a wig. But it wasn't until then, because he was leaning over the side of the boat. This amused the Sparky particularly, but that still reflected the way that we were all a wonderful team. Even the Sparkies and the dressers, they were all part. We respected them, and we really enjoyed them. They enjoyed working with us. But that's because we were all the same team, on the same planet, as it were.
I think we took the first dresser back to Shaw because he was so ill. And the other dresser said, oh, babe, you've let the whole side down. He got on the boat and immediately puked it.
And he wasn't gay, of course, was he?
Ray Buck, yeah, I remember him telling the story that he got on the ship and they said, you know, he said, is he all right? And someone said, oh, you better go and see David, he's not feeling too well. And when you were in a bunk with a bit of green makeup on?
Oh, yes, you're right. I've forgotten that. Yes, you're right. We wound up the director and we said that I was ill, too ill to continue filming. And they said, what do you mean? Christ, we've got to film this. We're up here and in Hull, we're going to make the episode. Well, what is it? What's happening? You go and have a look at it. And I was down in the, as you said, quite right, I was in one of the little cabin that they had on the thing, and they put some makeup on me, and I was lying there just going, oh. And the director was literally tearing his wig out himself, thinking, Christ, that leading man has gone ill. Well, we're going to finish the show. And that was that you reminded me, that again was sort of the way that we would behave, meaning that it was a wind-up, it was good fun, it had made us laugh, it didn't make the director laugh, but we were all part of the same team, and that's what I'm saying, and I think that is reflected in the show. That's why we enjoyed doing that show so much, because everybody was up for grabs. Everybody was, you take the piss out of anybody. That was tough shit if it was you.
And I'm reminded, and Tony, I think you were the filming of Yellow Peril, you and Nick, who got on really well, decided to wind up the new director, who I think was Mandy, would it be Mandy or Susie? But you decided to have a row, supposedly.
Yes. Was that, Tony, what were you? Oh.
That was, she wasn't directing. I think she was the production manager. And she came to call you onto the set.
That's right. We were in a
Caravan.
exchange little caravan.
Yeah.
Dressed in
It certainly wasn't the Bago time, was it?
No.
And so Nick and David decided to stage this almighty row.
Yeah.
And of course, this poor Mandy Fletcher was told in his, can you just get David and Nick, this mad argument was going on between the two of them, and she burst into tears.
Because what happened was that we set it up, and we said that she's going to come, we're going to get called, and she said, just before she comes, we'll watch her, we'll watch who's going to give us a call. And then, as I said, now what you do is you start shouting at me, we'll throw open the door, you go outside, and I will lean out, and you say you'll never work with me again. And I'll shout at you, I wouldn't work with you if you were the last actor on the world, on the planet. Now get out this hole. This drama that we've created, I slammed the door, and Nick slammed off, stomped away to wherever he'd gone. Well, you can imagine. Now we're not long, we were on vacation for the first day of this shoot, of this episode, and they just thought, God, what is going on? We're never going to do this program. So what happened after that, I don't know, because
I don't think I'd do that. I think I'm not sure I'd leave that. Just heard about it.
yeah.
I know Mandy, this guy alive.
Yes. So you can imagine the word went about, and they didn't know what they were doing. There was certain bricks being laid in certain places. After a while of all this, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't. Nick and I were in hysterics. It was wonderful to see all the worry, all the people frightened and terrified. They're going to have to work with us for another 6 months. No, good. But again, that reflected the way that we all, anything for a wind-up, anything for a laugh, anything to stir it up, make it different, have get everybody on the edge. So that was all part of the fun of the game.
And there was a king of wind-ups amongst the cast of Ken McDonald, of course.
Who threw that? Who threw that? Who threw that? He used to get a beer net and used to tear in it and stick it on his nose. And then he'd just say, who threw that? Who threw that? And it was he'd do it every episode. I did,
He'd come on the set with me, on the studio day, he'd come on the set and be introduced every time. Every time without fail, he'd come on the set, he'd go behind the bars, he'd go to everybody, and he'd come up and go, and usually got blamed for every time.
You got me a quite like the safe.
move on to dates, which we said, Tony, was your first episode. It wasn't your first bit of directing in the show, because you were telling me that during a bit of the Frog's legacy, sadly,
Looks
Ray
like
Bucks
it's
lost his
gonna
father,
die on me.
That was,
and you were called up to
that was called up.
Tell us about that scene though, because it's a very, very famous scene that you directed.
Well, I think I did, but I can't remember. I probably was just being polite because they, what happened was that Ray's dad had died, and I got a phone call from Mr. Moyer. Dow, get in, as they do with the BBC, those don't call you back. Dow, get in the car and get up there and sort it out. They need some help. So we went up to the Frog's Legacy, and that scene did Rodney in front of the in front of the hearse. Do you remember that? Dressed up in full Undertaker gear in the front.
Yes,
The Boise has a wonderful line, doesn't he? Yeah, Albert, you're mini. You're really better.
Yeah, and I got this. I mean, you say I directed it. I was up there and I hadn't directed anything in my life, so I just sat there and said yes. Let's do that. But yeah, that was the first time.
Now, John obviously always wrote more than 30 minutes, and around that time there was a move from you, David, to length of the episodes to 50 minutes, which obviously saved Twitter there. That series was some of the most popular episodes. But a big workload on you guys because you were filming in a very short turnaround. Tell us a bit about how the time scales of doing that. So you start with basically on a Monday.
I think when we did the first series, and then it was 50 minutes, I think we were meant to be 40 and we ended up in 50.
Yeah.
Because John, never knowing the underwritten, spoken, and it was difficult cutting John, I have to say, because Mrs. told us. But I think what we did was we literally, that first series was also going out. We would record them on Sunday and they were being transmitted the following time. So obviously we've done all the filming bits, but in terms of rehearsals from the actual studio, I'm pretty sure we went in on started rehearsing on a Tuesday, Wednesday we rehearsed, Thursday we rehearsed, Friday we do a dress rehearsal, Saturday we would pre-record because we had to pre-record due to having quite a few sets. You couldn't just go in and do, if you wanted to do the Nag's Head in the Trotters Lounge, that took up the whole studio. So what we'd do is if you wanted to do Cassandra's flat or something, Ronnie's stuff, you would shoot that on the previous day on another set. So we'd go in that Saturday, and then on the Sunday, you go live and do the show. And then the Monday was the day off, except for me, because I would have to then go and edit it. And then take it to the dub and the sound and the what's it and the music on it. Because it's going out the following Sunday, which is insane. And I kind of like, and in the meantime, with the Tuesday, once I've done editing, I was still having to go back every day and night because we were rehearsing the next one. But the good thing about
I was just going to reflect on that was that when that turnaround came from 30 to 40, it wasn't as easy as that because what happened was we had to cut, to get it into 30 minutes, we had to, once the series had got it, John had got it under his belt and he was writing at his best, he was writing more than 30 minutes. It was going much longer. But what was happening was they are cutting it to make 30 minutes. So we were rehearsing the show, and then they phone and say, we can't do this is far too long, because we used to time everything. We had a PA who would time everything as we rehearsed it, and so it was getting longer and longer. So the story was, they were cutting this particular episode, I remember, and I just got so fed up with it, and I said to John, look, this is ridiculous. I said, look, what we're doing, we're cutting and throwing away more funny material than most of the other comedy shows have got in the whole show. I said, and we're just throwing it away. So I said, this has got to change. So I said to John, look, we've got to go to 40 minutes. And so John and I went to Gareth Gwynlyn, and we went up with together and we said, look, we explained what had been happening and the material that we were just throwing away. It was gold dust. It was just so funny. And we were just saying, too long, too long, too long. And that was how it started. And he had to go to his bosses and say that these two are insisting that it could go to 40 minutes. And they were under the impression, said, no, situation comedy is only 30 minutes. It can be only 30 minutes. And we said, yes, but that's most comedies. This isn't. This is Fools and Horses stuff. I mean, you know. So that is the way it was called, the 40 minutes. And then, of course, it turned out you're writing 50 minutes and an hour. Silly being salt. But sorry, that is how that we then managed to get those longer ones on.
And what was interesting was, going back to that thing, the show going out the following Sunday, it was a nightmare to do. But what it did do, it was a cracking series, was that we got instant feedback while we were making the show. So we were coming in absolutely shattered on Tuesday, but the show, publicans had been putting televisions in their pubs because everybody was staying at home to watch Fools and Horses. The feedback was so enormous. So we used to come in quite energized because of the fact that we just knew that it was a huge hit. But my God, it was a killer. And the funny thing is, though, I remember this because you were talking about it, that when we came to that scene, when we went into the second one, you said to me, I'm not doing that, buddy. That's going to stop straight away. We're going to go back, let's do 10 days. We've got to have 10 days turnaround. And you know, we went to 10 days turnaround, so we had more time. And by 6 days, there was nowhere else to go. We did 3 days of just sitting around because they were so disciplined and so good at what they did that they were ready to go. And we did something. We're sitting on time with them, not doing anything. Very funny.
Yeah, I just remembered something that just again reflected on how we much loved each other in the nicest possible way. We enjoyed each other, and Tony was the butt of it. The rehearsal rooms, we had these rehearsal rooms down the flyover at where that brewery was. Anyway, and it had public toilets, and in this public toilet, they had about 4 or 5, little sections. You won't know, but when you shut the door, you do
cubicles.
Other stuff. Privacy. Cubicles, thank you. Who he knows, he's been there. So, what happened was, this is what happened was Tony was, before Tony was the director, he also was the first assistant. And Nick and I got to rehearsal rooms early, and we were thinking, what are we going to do? And Nick had got himself some of those bangers, you know, those things that we got out of crackers and whatever. And so we said, we always knew that Tony used to go into the toilets to make sure that they were, usable and they were clean, nobody was hiding in it. It was part of his job. So what we did was, we had these bangers and we put them on each one of the cubicles, so that when you opened the door, it exploded. So Nick and I flew. I said, "Hello, good morning, Tony. No, that's all right." And he said, "Yeah. Well, you're going to go off and just check the toilets?" Yes, all right. Well, all that we just stood there like this and just waited. All we heard was, "Bang! Oh, bastard, who did that? Oh, you bastard, who did that?" He came out furious, but it was such fun. We knew that he was going to do it, and it just, again, it was such a pleasure. He wasn't very pleased, but Nick and I were.
We're getting to the end of our time talking about Only Fools, which is a real shame because I think we could talk about it all day. Probably all night.
No, you're reminding us. You keep reminding us of little things. Yeah.
The episode that so many people love, Jolly Boys Housing. If not,
Told you.
And everybody away together and all that, which presumably got a fun for your actors. But Tony, having lots of people who like each other and get on probably caused a problem for a director because. Oh, okay.
You can't hear you, so. Perhaps it's just as well, I was saying. This story will be bloody good.
Wasn't it was Adrian Pegg absolutely going nuts with you because all the actors were there, and of course actors, when they're not doing anything, they're waiting for the thing to do, they like to chat. And he just chatted and chatted, and I do remember one time he just stood in the middle of Margate, and he suddenly screamed at the top of his voice, "Will you effing shut up?"
And David, what's your favourite memory from filming that episode? Because there were so many lovely bits. Do you have a particular scene or moment?
Well, again, what I liked about it was, again, all of the silly things that we got up to, but one of the things that I liked about it, and this comes back to the director again, to have the courage to play a scene out and let the audience enjoy and relax on it. Now, they don't do that anymore. It's, come on, get on with it, cut. And the thing that I was saying about that, I always remember, is the journey. I'm not sure the helicopter, it wasn't a drone, was it? It was a helicopter. Yeah, and the shot was the coach coming into Margate, and the helicopter would be flying along with the coach as it came down the front, and then you played that tune, everybody's talking. But what it did was, and this is why it's one of my favourites, he allows the tune to drive the and they get out, and I did that impersonation of Dustin Hoffman with the limp and all that. But what the director did was allow the whole of the music to dictate the pictures, so that we, the audience, could enjoy the music, the soundtrack, the pictures, and have the courage to allow that to happen, to take that time without cutting in, cut, was one of the things I always remember about the Jolly Boys outing, because it set up the mood, the feel of it, and that was just part of the good feel factor the director, being Tony, is here, I don't mind saying it to him, that gave us, the audience, when I saw it back and see it back, but just having the courage to play that whole tune and have the shots just it's a sort of wonderful moment. And it's pretty daring, because what they would do, as I just mentioned, now they would say, oh, come on, get it moving, we've got to cut in, we've got to cut, we've got to move it. Well, the point of the story is that he wanted the story to unfold himself, and for us to enjoy it. And I find that so missing in modern comedies today. And that again was Tony's concept of how he was going to tell that story of the silly lads going on a day trip to Margate, and it was just such evocative of the period at the time. And that's what I mean. Sometimes the unsung heroes are people like our director, our writer, and all of that, and I can't help praising them enough, because we're the guys up at the front that people remember, but that they don't remember really is the contribution that people like Tony and certainly John Sullivan did. Because also on that same topic, I remember that Nick Lyndhurst was asked a question about how we enjoyed, how we made the series. And his comment was that his praise was very high for John Sullivan. And he said, John Sullivan makes the ammunition and we just fire it. Which was a sort of crude way of talking about, but he was putting himself down in a way that it was the creative side of it was more important than what we did. And I think that's what I like about the Jolly Boys outing. That was a lovely, beautiful shot that you dared to do. Well done, Tony.